Are we seriously pretending that what we just watched was normal? Because losing a basketball game, that is part of the sport. Even elite teams drop games. Shots clank off the rim. Defensive rotations break down. The other team catches fire and there is nothing you can do about it. We understand that. We accept that. But what happened after this game? That was something entirely different. The Indiana Fever did not just lose to the Golden State Valkyries. They got systematically dismantled. Outworked, outthought, and outclassed on both ends of the floor from the opening tip to the final buzzer. And if that was all we had to talk about tonight, this would be a very different conversation. But then came the press conference, and everything changed. Because here is the thing that people need to understand before we go any further. This is not a rebuilding franchise operating on a shoestring budget with a roster full of developmental players trying to find their way. This is the Indiana Fever. This is a team featuring Caitlin Clark, a player who by most estimates is responsible for driving approximately 26.5% of this entire league's economic ecosystem. Ticket sales, viewership numbers, merchandise revenue, sponsorship deals. The financial gravity of this one player is almost impossible to fully comprehend. And the people responsible for surrounding that player with structure, preparation, and tactical intelligence just sat at a podium and insulted everyone watching. What Stephanie White and Aaliyah Boston did in front of those cameras was not just disappointing. It was not just frustrating. It was a complete and total refusal to accept reality. It was the kind of performance that makes you question everything, not just about one bad night, but about the culture being built inside that organization. Every answer mattered tonight. Every single word mattered. Let us start with the first question, the one that should have been straightforward. The Fever just dropped a tight game. The final offensive possessions were chaotic and desperate. A reporter steps up and asks Stephanie White a basic question. What did she think about the final 2 shots of the game? Now think about what an honest, self-aware coach says in that moment. A real coach says we did not execute when it mattered most. A real coach says we panicked under pressure, and I need to do a better job of drawing up cleaner looks in those moments. A real coach takes the weight of that moment onto her own shoulders because that is what leadership looks like. That is what accountability sounds like. Stephanie White says she liked the looks. She liked them. Let that sit for a second, because we need to actually talk about what those possessions looked like in real time. Caitlin Clark gets the ball and is immediately met with a vicious double.
What did you like about those final 2 shots, both the one before the jump ball and then the one to try and tie it?
I thought they were both good looks. You know, they're a really good defensive team, and when you get an opportunity to get some clean looks, it's important. You know, I thought we got some good looks. They just
team. 2 defenders converge. She is being pressured violently with nowhere to go. And somehow, she manages to thread a pass inside to Aaliyah Boston. That pass alone was a minor miracle given the pressure Clark was under. Boston catches it in a decent position. She has size. She has strength. She has a clear physical advantage over the defender beside her. This is the moment where a confident, disciplined post player makes a decisive move. You take one power dribble, you establish your base, you go up strong. Instead, Boston freezes. She spins in one direction and then stops. She hesitates. She looks completely lost in the moment, as though the weight of the situation has completely overwhelmed her technical execution. And then she just releases the ball, no real angle, no real rhythm, no conviction whatsoever. The kind of attempt that tells you everything you need to know about her mental state in that possession. That is not a good look. That is a broken possession born from a lack of late-game structure. And when the media asks the head coach about it, the head coach sits there with a straight face and tells everyone watching that she liked what she saw. This is the part that is genuinely maddening, because it is not just about one wrong answer at a press conference. It is about what that answer reveals. It reveals a coach who is either unable or unwilling to identify her own team's failures in real time. And if you cannot identify the failures, you absolutely cannot fix them. You cannot solve a problem you refuse to see. But as infuriating as that answer was, it was honestly just the opening act of what was about to unfold. Brace yourself for this one, because what happened next belongs in a completely different...
Question for Coach. Did you expect number 4 for the Valkyries to play as much as she did in that second half? You think it's good?
Yeah.
Look, she didn't know you didn't. No, you didn't. Aaliyah Boston had the point on the paper to show who she was talking about. She don't even know who number 4 is. Stephanie White wasn't prepared for her.
Category of alarming. A reporter directs a question at Stephanie White about a specific Valkyries player. He asks whether White expected number 4 to play as much as she did in the second half. It is a perfectly reasonable tactical question. It is exactly the kind of thing coaches are asked after games all the time. Stephanie White pauses. The look on her face shifts. She is searching. And in that pause, Aaliyah Boston leans over to the stat sheet sitting on the table in front of them. She looks down at the paper, and she physically points her finger at it to show her own head coach who the reporter was referring to. The head coach did not know who number 4 was. She did not recognize the jersey number of a player who was actively impacting the game on the floor in front of her. Now let us be very clear about what a head coach's job actually requires at this level. You are being paid a significant salary to prepare your team for every possible scenario. That means watching film for hours. That means building detailed scouting reports on every player in the opposing rotation. That means knowing tendencies, knowing jersey numbers, knowing who gets hot in certain moments and why. That is the baseline expectation. That is not going above and beyond. That is simply doing the job. And in a live press conference, with cameras rolling and reporters watching, Stephanie White demonstrated that she did not know the jersey number of a player who had just spent the second half causing her defense significant problems. This is not a small oversight. In any serious professional sports organization, this moment alone triggers a very uncomfortable internal conversation, because preparation is not optional at this level. It is the entire foundation. And when the head coach visibly lacks that preparation in front of the media, it raises a deeply uncomfortable question. If she does not know who number 4 is at the press conference, what else is she missing when she is drawing up the game plan? What other personnel details are falling through the cracks? And if the head coach is walking into games underprepared, then of course the players are going to look underprepared on the floor, because preparation flows from the top down, always. The Fever have looked disorganized and reactive in far too many games this season. And this moment, this one completely avoidable moment, explains a significant portion of why. But if you think the coach's performance at the podium was rough, just wait until you hear what her star center had to say. Aaliyah Boston is a talent.
Question for
When are you going to talk about your coaching? When are you going to talk about you not having your team ready in practice? When are you going to talk about anything that you did wrong? Natalie Nakase coach circles around you, Stephanie White. When are you going to address it? Your team looked ill-prepared. We look unprepared damn near every game. This was ridiculous.
Talented basketball player. That is not up for debate. She is physical. She is skilled in certain areas. And on paper, a 4-year, $6 million contract for your starting center seems like a reasonable investment for a franchise trying to build around a generational point guard. But what Boston showed in this game, and what she said after it, reveals a problem that goes much deeper than one bad performance. For the majority of the first half, Boston was invisible in the worst possible way. Not invisible because the defense was doing something extraordinary to neutralize her. Invisible because she was choosing to drift. She was floating around the three-point line, operating far away from where her physical advantages actually live. She was not establishing post position early. She was not demanding the ball in the paint. She was not using her size to create pressure. She was simply out there. And then came the fouls. Foul trouble has followed Aaliyah Boston like a shadow throughout her career, and the pattern is always the same. She waits for the defense to get set. She tries to go through the defender instead of around them. She lowers her shoulder and initiates contact. And then when the referee calls the charge, she looks around with genuine disbelief on her face. It happens in every city, against every team, with every officiating crew. At some point, the variable...
Nothing. You put her out there on the island. The girl gets blitzed and trapped all game. You created nothing for Caitlin Clark. You created nothing for Caitlin Clark. They're asking you about the similarities and how they're guarding her. You're saying you don't know. Maybe that's why you have no idea on how to free her up. You don't know. You don't know nothing. You never know anything. I don't know.
That never changes becomes the answer. So when Boston sits at the press conference microphone and says she could not get into a flow, that it is super hard to understand how the refs are calling things, that defenders were not in legal position, and that the Valkyries were flopping while the refs were buying it. That is not analysis. That is deflection wrapped in frustration, because here is the reality. If the opposing team is consistently drawing charges against you, the solution is not to wait for referees to suddenly start seeing things differently. The solution is to fix your footwork. It is to establish deeper post position before the defense can set. It is to use your drop step more effectively so you are going to the rim instead of into a defender's chest. Those are technical corrections. And instead of even hinting at that possibility, Boston chose to aim her frustration at the officials and the opposing team. Now here is something worth thinking about. This kind of deflection mentality rarely develops in isolation. Players are shaped by the culture around them, by the standards that are enforced or ignored, by the example set at the very top of the organization. And the example being set at the top of this organization, we just watched it. Let us talk about what was happening on the other bench while all of this was unfolding. Because the contrast between Natalie Nakase and Stephanie White tonight was genuinely difficult to watch if you are an Indiana Fever fan.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even able to get into a flow. I mean, I played the second half. I think it's super hard to try and figure out and understand how the refs are calling it. I think it's super hard to get charge fouls when I don't think anyone's in legal position. I mean, shout out to the Valks. I mean, they did a great job selling it, and the refs bought it, to be honest, so good for them.
3 moments defined that press conference. Calling a broken, panicked late game possession a good look, not recognizing a key opposing player's jersey number until a teammate pointed at a stat sheet, and answering a direct question about how defenses are attacking the franchise player with 3 words that no head coach at this level should ever say out loud. Those 3 moments are not random. They are connected. They are symptoms of the same underlying problem, a leadership approach that is either unwilling or unable to confront its own failures with honesty. And in professional sports, the refusal to be honest about failure is the fastest path to repeating it. Fans feel this. The numbers in the building and on the broadcast feel this. The energy around this team, which should be electric every single night given the talent involved, carries an undercurrent of frustration that is getting harder to mask. Accountability is not just about what you say at a press conference. It is about the preparation you bring to the film room at 6 in the morning. It is about the adjustments you make at halftime when the game plan is not working. It is about the plays you draw up in a timeout when your best player is getting trapped and your team needs a lifeline. It is about all of the invisible work that either shows up on the floor or does not. Right now, for the Indiana Fever, too much of that invisible work is not showing up. The question is whether the people with the power to change that are watching closely enough to recognize it, because Caitlin Clark is special, genuinely, historically special, the kind of player who comes along once in a generation, and she deserves.
Here, where Caitlin Clark had a tough shooting game, are there any similarities to how they guarded her last year to this year? Is there any different wrinkles at the team?
I mean, I don't know. I think she.
What do you mean you don't know? They ask, is it similarities in how they guarded her last year to this year? This is the head coach. She said, I don't know.
Deserves better than this. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the front office needs to step in? Is this fixable from the inside, or does something more significant need to change? Let us hear where you stand. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we are not done holding this franchise accountable. Every game, every press conference, every decision that affects the future of this team, we will be right here.